Dolphins fans, welcome into this edition of Dolphins Today. I'm your host, Will Scott. Got an exciting show ahead. I'm going to give you an update on Deebo Samuel, if a trade could be on the horizon. Then I'm going to get into some Deebo Samuel trade ideas. What would it take to get the 49ers star receiver? But first, if you could please go down in the comments on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this show to a Dolphins friend of yours? Let me know what you think. And if you're typing 9 or 10, you know what we'd really appreciate here at Chat Sports? You telling a friend of yours about the show. The sublink is down in the comments and in the description. Let's start with Deebo Samuel, an update on Deebo, of course, requesting a trade from the San Francisco 49ers earlier this week. The Miami Dolphins, mainly because of his connections to the team, one of the NFL teams linked in a Deebo Samuel trade. And I know a lot of Dolphins fans are arguing, we don't need Deebo Samuel. We already have a really good wide receiver room. You're right. But if Deebo wants to come to Miami, you absolutely bring him to Miami. He's too good of a player to not bring him in if he wants to be reunited with Mike McDaniel. I know he's going to come with a very hefty price tag. You figure that out later, and you win right now with Deebo Samuel. Here's what Ian Rappaport said earlier today on the Pat McAfee show. From my understanding, Deebo Samuel basically told the 49ers, I want to be traded and don't make an offer. I don't think this is about the money. And if that's true, Deebo, then how about this? How about you come take a pay cut, come play for Miami, and be reunited with your boy Mike McDaniel? Because if Deebo is willing to take a pay cut and, let's say, play for $21 to $22 million a year instead of $25, $26, no-brainer, you give him that money and bring him in. Is he going to be traded, though, is still the question. The 49ers, maybe they try to keep him around, give him a big-time offer. So let me ask you, will Deebo Samuel be traded? It's the pinned comment on today's video. Get down in the comments section when you're hit with an ad break here in a few seconds. Type your T for trade or type your S for stay if you think he's going to stay with San Francisco. Here's what Emmanuel Acho said on his show on Fox Sports. If Deebo is assessing the situation and he realizes under Mike McDaniel, I had an 80% increase in yards per rush. Under Mike McDaniel, I had a 40% increase in yards per reception. Under Mike McDaniel, I was a first-team All-Pro. With Mike McDaniel gone, I got to be gone. Wow. And that went viral on Dolphins Twitter yesterday, that clip. And look, he's got a point. Look at Deebo's stats with Mike McDaniel and without Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel was the offensive coordinator in San Francisco for just 1 year, and in that 1 year, Deebo Samuel became one of the best players in the NFL, more specifically, the most versatile player in the NFL with what he could do on the ground and at the wide receiver position. Now with Mike McDaniel gone, maybe some question marks around that San Francisco offense. Maybe Deebo wants out, or at the very least wants to get paid right now before the start of next season. And if you could please subscribe to the channel, we'd really appreciate that. We're closing in on 24,000 subscribers, need about 200 more. Look, the more subs we get, the more content you get. So do me a favor by hitting that big red sub button if you haven't already. Now let's get into some Deebo Samuel trade ideas. And this is one we've talked about before. And with the draft coming up next week and with the Deebo Samuel trade rumors starting to escalate, very good chance he's traded before the draft. This is in the event where he gets traded after the draft. So I'm going to say the Dolphins are going to give up their first-round pick, second-round pick, and third-round pick next year to get Deebo Samuel. And if we're looking at Miami's 2023 2023 draft picks, they're loaded. They have 5 picks in the first 3 rounds, including San Francisco's pick. So how about you just give that pick right back to San Francisco for Deebo Samuel? So right now they're really, really loaded with picks. If they make this trade, they'll have these picks left available, 5 picks overall. You still have a first-round selection. You still have a third-round pick, but no second-round pick. This obviously looks a lot better than what they have this year, but it doesn't look as good if you're giving up that draft capital for Deebo Samuel. But I think this is the most likely Deebo trade. I've said it once, I'll say it again. If Deebo Samuel gets traded before the draft, it's not going to be to the Miami Dolphins. Hate to say it, it's probably going to be to the New York Jets or maybe even the New England Patriots, 2 teams that have been connected to Deebo Samuel in our division. If you wait until after the draft to trade him, though, the Dolphins have just about as much draft capital as any other team in the National Football League for next year. Much more realistic to get Deebo after the draft. So hopefully that trade can stall a little bit. Let me ask you, how much would you give up for Deebo Samuel? Would you give up draft picks? Would you give up players? How many draft picks? Which player? Let me know down in the comments section. Trade idea number 2. Let's say in the next few days, Chris Grier is hearing different things from around the league that Deebo is going to get traded before the draft, and you have to make a move now. This is what that might look like. 3rd-round pick this year, which is, of course, Miami's first selection in the NFL draft, number 102 overall. 1st-round pick next year, 2nd-round pick next year. Here are Miami's draft picks this year, so you're probably going to have to give up at least 1 or maybe even 2 of these picks to get Deebo Samuel before draft day. I don't know if Miami's going to be looking to do that because they don't have that much draft capital this year. Far better to wait until after the draft to make a move for Deebo Samuel. But would you make this trade? Type Y for yes or N for no. Again, the Dolphins giving up their 3rd-round pick this year, 1st and 2nd-round picks next year. Let me know what you think. Trade idea number 3, and now we're going to start getting players involved. Dolphins received Deebo Samuel in a 6th-round pick this year. That was very important for me in this trade idea to still have 4 picks in this year's draft. The Niners get a 4th-round pick this year, a 1st-round pick next year, a 3rd-round pick next year, so 1st and 3rd-round picks for next year, and Lynn Bowden Jr. And look, if I know Lynn Bowden has a lot of potential, but if you trade for Deebo Samuel, you really don't need this guy, and we didn't see him last year, showed some flashes in his rookie season in 2020. This is what he did his senior season at Kentucky when he was he was kind of like Kentucky's Deebo Samuel. I mean, doing absolutely everything, passing the football, rushing the football. He was a wide receiver. He set Kentucky's single-game rushing record by a quarterback with 284 rushing yards against their biggest rival in Louisville. He was a unanimous first-team All-American at Kentucky. He was a really good wide receiver there, and when their quarterback went down, he became the starting quarterback as well and had a really good season. So that might be kind of the appeal if you're San Francisco in acquiring him in a Deebo trade. Speaking of Kentucky, someone who I really like in this year's draft from Kentucky is Luke Fortner. He could very well be the Dolphins selection in round 3. And on Chat Sports, we're going to be breaking down every single pick, rounds 1 through 7 on our main YouTube channel. The subscribe link is in the description, in the comments, youtube.com/chatsportstv. We're going to have the best coverage by far, better than ESPN, better than NFL Network, better than Bleacher Report. So be sure to check us out here next week on Draft Night. Let's get into trade idea number 4, and now it's starting to get a little bit crazy. Linebacker is still a need for the Dolphins. They need some depth at that position. So let's go ahead and get Oren Burks from the 49ers in a Deebo Samuel trade and their 6th-round pick this year. We're going to give Austin Jackson, and we're going to give a 1st-round pick, a 2nd-round pick, and a 5th-round pick next year. And when you're looking at this trade and you're looking at the players involved, you're obviously saying, Austin Jackson and Noah Igbenogany are not really that great of players. Why would the 49ers want him? I mean, look, Igbenogany still has a lot of potential, I think. Former first-round pick. Austin Jackson, a former first-round pick. Now, obviously, if this trade is made, the Dolphins are the clear winners in this trade. But maybe we can rip John Lynch off a little bit and try to make this trade. You're still giving up 3 draft picks. You're giving up 2 players. You're getting 2 players and a draft pick. I don't think this is realistic. But if the 49ers want players involved in this trade, you're obviously not going to give them Jalen Waddle. You're obviously not going to give them a guy like Xavier Howard or Emmanuel Ogbah. So I would rather give them those 2 instead of some of our other key players and maybe give them more draft picks on top of it. Here's my last trade idea, which I think is by far the most fair. The Dolphins get Deebo, and then they go sign J.C. Tretter. Hashtag JC to Miami. The Niners receive Michael Dieter, and that's it. I think that's a very fair trade. In fact, I think the 49ers would win this deal. So, John Lynch, if you're watching this video, I would accept this deal. In fact, I would call Chris Greer right now, and I would want to bring Michael Dieter to San Francisco. He's the best center in the league, best center in football. I think his PFF grade was, really good last year. It wasn't. But I think it's a fair trade. I can't even keep a straight face. I think it's a fair trade. Hashtag JC to Miami. And if you want to stay up to date with all the latest Dolphins trade rumors and news, be sure to hit that big red sub button right now and subscribe. This has been Will Scott with Dolphins Today. Have a fantastic weekend, Dolphins fans. And hopefully Deebo or JC Tretter is a Dolphin by the end of the weekend. We'll talk to you soon.